Mr. Innocent Chugoma. I started by trading on motorcycle spare parts.
They really ask, how much is the Nigerian life worth?
Policing is everybody's business, not the business of the men on uniform alone.
We will establish student loan 4 years course, but before years course.
When you dispense, a pharmacist dispenses a drug to a patient, the name of the drug must be written on the envelope.
On Record is a 45-minute program where we discuss the actions, inactions of government, ministries, departments, and agencies, as well as business and health affairs that shape our worldview.
Join us 9 a.m. every weekday on your urban lifestyle station, High Impact 102.1 FM. On Record.
Every word matters.
A very good morning to you, Nigerians. Good morning to you, Lagosians. Welcome once again to On Record. My name is Oyinpriye Krumale. We're still in the season of elections as March 11th is at the corner, and we will be having a conversation on the review of the 25th of February, elections ahead of what's going to happen on March 11th, and our conversation this morning will be with some of the persons whose feet were on ground when the elections took place proper. Elections in Nigeria, in Africa's biggest democracy, have been dogged by low voter turnout, which has declined every year since 2003. Voter turnout is calculated by dividing the total number of votes cast by the number of collected permanent voter cards, PVC. According to Bloomberg, the turnout of voters in the just concluded presidential elections and the National Assembly elections was the lowest on record, with fewer than 3 out of 10 people who registered and collected voting cards casting their ballots. This represents about 29% of eligible voters cast their ballot on February 25th. It added that the turnout was the lowest on record since the end of military rule. Well, let's just put a little disclaimer here. There was also a large turnout of people, and unlike previous elections, Nigerians, they were hungry not to only cast their votes, but also to make a loud statement with their PVCs. However, the many allegations leveled against the electoral umpire, INEC, is still on ground for us to dissect and consider if they prevented voters by virtue of their actions or inactions on February 25th. In clearer terms, 93.4 million registered voters this year. 87.2 million people collected their permanent voter cards, and the total number of actual voters on election day was only 24.9 million. What could be responsible for this anomaly? These are some of the questions we will be addressing today. And our conversation will be with representatives of Yiaga Africa, the Youth Initiative for Advocacy, Growth and Advancement. Yiaga Africa is a non-profit civic hub of change makers committed to the promotion of democratic governance, human rights, and civil engagement. Yiaga Africa was launched as a student organization in 2007 at the University of Jos, Nigeria, and has since established itself as a leading civil society organization in Africa. Since its inception, it has carved a niche for itself as one of Africa's frontline non-profit organizations promoting participatory democracy, human rights, and civic participation. With its operational base in Abuja, Nigeria, Yiaga Africa focuses on in-depth research, providing critical analysis on key democratic and governance issues, crafting practical solutions, and training and empowering citizens of the country to lead change in their community. Yiaga Africa implements several innovative programs aimed at stimulating active citizenship, protecting human rights, and deepening democratic governance. They invest in building networks and social movements to drive social change and transformation. The organization has with leadership structures and members in the 36 states and 774 local government areas in Nigeria. And our guest is with Mark Amaza, Senior Communications Officer of Yiaga Africa. Let's briefly go on a break. When we return, we'll jump into the business of the day. It's on record where every word matters. Do stay with us.
Put a touch of class and finesse on your brand by advertising with us at High Impact 1021 FM. For more information, call 0706 393 5694, 0915 958 1881, or 0902 745 3931. Follow us on our social media platforms at High Impact 1021 FM. Our deals are hotter than the weather itself.
Our deals are hotter than the weather itself.
If it's public opinion, expert analysis, information that matters to you, we have it on record Mondays to Fridays, 9 a.m. on High Impact 102.1 FM. Call us 0700 1021 1021. WhatsApp 0907 224 5018.
Do you know bad production can kill a great content idea?
Do you want to have a photo shoot, audio production, or do you need a professional voiceover artist?
Do you simply want unmatched cinematography, video production, or just event coverage, such as weddings, birthdays, or burials?
Or do you need a space for meetings or conferences? All these are possible with High Impact Studios. Don't bring down your creativity, let's help you take it high.
And out of this world with our state-of-the-art equipment and first-class studio space.
We give you the quality you deserve at the best rate.
For more details, call 0706 393 5694 or 0915 958 1881. High Impact Studios, the future.
On record.
Every word matters.
Welcome back, and many thanks for joining us on the program. Like I said earlier on, we will be having a conversation this morning, and my guest is Mark Amaza, Senior Communications Officer in the Yiaga Africa. Good morning and welcome to On Record, Mr. Mark.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. It's great to have you.
Good to be here.
Yes. Before I jump into the conversation with our guest this morning, I would like to tell our listeners that remember, you can join the conversation at 9:20. You can phone into the studio. We'll be opening the phone lines. In the meantime, you can send your WhatsApp messages to 0907 224 5018. I take that again. You can send in your WhatsApp messages at the meantime to 0907 224 5018. Welcome once again, Mr. Mark Amaza.
Thank you.
Yes, we know Yiaga Africa as a change-making, non-profit making organization with its knack for promoting good governance and involving in issues like public policy and elections. So, for the February 25th presidential and National Assembly elections, what were your observations in all the polling units, all the areas in the nation where you monitored the process?
Okay, so overall, our findings found in many cases where there wasn't enough early arrival of electoral materials.
Okay.
We knew that by 9 a.m. only about less than half of the employees were observing. And just make clear, we don't observe election at every polling unit. We observe in a sample of polling units. The sample is wide enough to cover in every local government area of the country. And only about half had received polling unit materials. And in cases, and even though, and also that we noticed that there wasn't initially the BVAS machines didn't work optimally in all the polling units, and those were later fixed. So those are initial observations regarding the election. So we have put out statements regarding that. Those our observations, and including a post-election regarding
Are you there?
Yes, I'm there.
Okay.
You heard me.
Okay. If that's the case, what about the issue? Was there issue of vote buying, or was there issues of intimidation of voters in some of those places where you carried out the observatory activities?
We did not notice these issues you mentioned regarding intimidation and vote buying. Perhaps the cash crunch has contributed to a huge reduction in vote buying.
Okay.
However, we know that a lot of voters had difficulties relocating polling units. If you remember, INEC migrated many voters to new polling units just before the election. And this was something that we had anticipated in our pre-election report. Many voters didn't get the SMS INEC sent. I personally, for example, also had some issues keeping my own polling unit because I was changed just before the election. So those things were factors that that contributed to that we observed. We in some cases we know that there were critical accidents such as polling officials declining to deploy for elections. To be specific, we know like in Imo State, in Pala local government,
yes,
there was that shortage of ad hoc staff. We had cases where sometimes the fever machines didn't authenticate the face or fingerprint of voters. However, in cases of intimidation, we did not notice that in the polling units we observed.
Okay, Mr. Manza, can you be somewhat specific about some of the challenges you encountered, either some of those challenges peculiar to the northern part of the country, or some of the other challenges that your other representatives, your colleagues encountered who were monitoring elections in the southern part of the country, in the southeastern part of the country, the southwest, and the north, and every other part of the country? Could you be more specific about the peculiarity of those challenges?
Okay, so I would say in terms of peculiarity of challenges by region, what we can say, what we notice is that in most polling units in where we observe, in the north, across the three geopolitical zones in the north, there was a earlier commencement of election. So we had that by 9:30, at least 40% of them had commenced.
In the northern part of the country.
Yeah, but however, in the southeast, for example, only 10% of polling units have commenced by 9:30 a.m., only 29% in the south, and then the highest ones in the south, up to 63% have commenced identification and voting by 9:30. But for the other issues I mentioned, they cut across the country in terms of challenges in locating polling units, in terms of the deployment of the beavers, in terms of short polling election materials, those cut across the country. There's also the fact that in about almost a third of polling units, voters had to climb, had difficulties accessing the polling unit, whether they had to climb steps, whether they had to cross over gutters, and this was especially a detriment for persons with disability, voters with disability.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Now, was there no challenge at all or observation about underage voters in any of those regions?
Well, our observation did not flag that. Again, like I mentioned, because we're not observing every single polling unit, we only in a sample. It's possible that it happened in certain polling units, but not in the polling units that we observed. But regarding your question about underage voting, remember that late in December, INEC had opened a window for claims and objections on the voters register, and it asked voters or citizens to object to people who they feel should not be on the voters register. And in many cases, we citizens, not just Yiaga Africa, noticed that they're underage voters. However, the process by which INEC had designed for you to object to certain, in this case, for example, underage voters, was faulty, and we raised that issue. Because if I'm going to object that you are underage voter, I have to present evidence. In that case, that of your birth certificate or declaration of age, proof, which is really difficult because I can't have access to birth certificate of someone who isn't under my authority.
Under your custody. But is there a possibility for the person being accused for the person or the guardian of the person being accused to produce the certificate the birth certificate?
So that's whatever we put the America design, and that process was very faulty.
Okay.
So even though citizens could clearly see, and again, this is something that across most of the country, you had a little bit underage voters on the register. Citizens could do little with that information because the process which America designed had made it cumbersome to raise those objections.
Okay, but during these elections, if your organization or any other civil society, social organization are on ground and they notice and they see underage voters and they can tell even from the physical appearance of such person that this is an underage voter, and in that case, what do you do?
So as observers, we can't interfere with the...
Oh, you can't even raise alarm at that moment?
We can't do that. Our job is to observe and report findings, report lapses, make recommendations. So that's why we're doing our best to raise the alarm before the election regarding our next process where citizens can raise claims and objections on the voter register. But during the election itself, you're not supposed to interfere. You're just supposed to observe.
Okay.
It's literally observing.
All right, I see that. There seems to be some of a lacuna there, so you can't even talk to the police officer who will be on guard there without arms. About you can't raise that matter even with the police officer there on the polling unit.
So unfortunately, as long as the person has a voter register and is a person has a voter's card, the person has the right to vote. The only way to have gone around to prevent that certain situation would have been to make the person be struck off the voter register. And that's when you cannot start. Not even the presiding officer has the power to do that at that time.
We are not trying to reference that. We are trying to reference instances where the age and the physical appearance of the person falls short of the eligibility law that is put in place by INEC.
I understand. I understand the question.
Okay.
And
Okay, now let's move away from that. What do you think was, like I read out from the beginning of the program, Bloomberg said that the 2023 election recorded the lowest turnout compared to a previous election where there have been complaints. But it had the highest number of registered voters. When we look at it, that they sound contradictory. What do you think was responsible for that? Can we say Bloomberg's report or research is faulted, or they are not giving the perfect pictorial representation of what transpired that day on ground during the elections?
No, we can't fault Bloomberg's report because Bloomberg didn't pull its numbers out of thin air. Even if you look at INEC data and you look at all the number of votes that came in for the presidential election and the number of collected PVCs, you will still arrive at that range of 24 to 26%, maybe at most 7% voter turnout. For me, it was quite disappointing because we were really hoping that there will be higher voter turnout this year. And there are many factors responsible.
Please go on.
One is you look at things around how the logistical challenge the INEC had in terms of taking materials in time to polling units. You have to know when in some polling units, voters could not start voting or could not even vote until much later in the day, 6 p.m., 8 p.m., in some cases 10 p.m. So much come back the next day. These things become a disincentive to voters who do not vote. So there's that issue. You had issues with the beavers machine, which was part of the logistical challenges. But for me, I also feel at this point we need to do a forensic examination of the voter register in terms of
forensic examination of the voter register.
Yeah, are we working the accurate figure for the voter register? How many do we need to do a kind of verification for everybody on the voter register as much as possible to have a more accurate number? If the baseline we're working for the voter register was faulty in the first place, maybe from 2011 when starting biometric verification, biometric registration, you are now building upon that faulty data consistently, and that will now lead to very skewed or misleading voter turnout figures in terms of how many people that deceased are on the voter register, how many people that were
Mr. Mark,
how much
Mr. Mark, yes, I can hear you clearly. I just want to interrupt you to reiterate what you said before about the voter register and the research and the research. Yes, about the forensic exercise. Yes.
it's not a conclusive statement.
Okay.
It's not a statement that we have done. Is this my own opinion?
Yes.
Where I'm saying that we also need to look at how accurate our voter registration figures are.
Okay.
In terms of a cleanup of the register, in terms of, for example, removing people who are deceased from the register.
Okay.
In terms of how much multiple registrations are still exist, maybe with different names. If is it able to flag, for example, you registering under a different name but the same biometrics. All of those things need to be done because it now raises the question, because you could see that there's a huge enthusiasm for voting this year. You had 9 million names added to the voter register, and then despite all of the lapses in the election planning,
yes,
we should have had a higher voter turnout. We should have.
Okay, thank you very much. You can now call into the program is 0700 1021 1021 0700 1021 1021. Call in to join the conversation or send your WhatsApp messages to our WhatsApp line on 0907 224 5018 0907 224 5018. And to you, our listener, I would like to ask, what are the areas you want INEC to improve on in order to conduct a more credible gubernatorial and state assembly polls as we move closer to March the 11th? Now, let's come back to you, Mr. Mark. Let's talk to us about the importance of the bimodal voter and accreditation system and how it can make or mar election results. Earlier, while you were painting out a position, you said that you make some few references to it. So how can this machine work efficiently and effectively for the national elections?
So the BVAS is actually a novel piece of technology that will make goes a long way in sanitizing or ensuring the credibility of our election process. So you have, prior to the introduction of the BVAS and its enshrinement in law, you had a situation where even though we had smart card readers, it wasn't recognized by law. It was INEC guideline, and in many cases, the use of incidence form was abused grossly. Where people can be presided, polling officers can just claim that even though this person registered, his matter has not been read, and then and it allowed for a lot of introduction of election irregularities.
Okay.
So the BVAS, the fact that you have to be accredited, and that accredited number that you voting, once the votes are above that number of accredited voters in that polling unit, the polling unit votes have to be cancelled. That goes a long way to introducing some sanity and credibility in the process. It's really a good,
Okay, if that's the case, now let me just quickly bring up this particular matter. Do remember that after the swearing in, I beg your pardon, after the announcement of the president-elect, the Labour Party and PDP vice presidential candidates threatened court action, and equally, INEC and some other INEC went to court as well to seek the court's permission for maybe the removal of the data of the election that was conducted on the 25th of February, and the parties had to go to court to say, okay, they are for the courts to bar INEC not to tamper with those data, because it's going to be presented in court as evidence. In cases like that, if they go on and conduct the elections of March 11th, is there a possibility that it might alter the data, or how does the BVAS really operate in that sense, where it can store previous data, accommodate new data, and to be able to differentiate which of the votes was cast during February 25th and the votes that were cast in March 11th?
Yes, so I understand the arguments of all the parties.
Yes.
In terms of the political parties who want the data to be kept as it is for the purposes of the election petition, and INEC who wants to use those same machines as they should for the March 11th election.
Yes.
In INEC's claim is that they'll move the current data on the machines to a back-end server.
Okay.
And then to be able to, and then that way that data is warehoused safely, and then they can now go ahead with the election, which is critical. It is a critical case because whether the inability, if the court do not agree or agree to INEC's request,
yes,
it means that there will have to be a postponement of the March 11th election.
Mm.
And also, it's also important that the earlier, if INEC also gets that court request, that grants the request by the court in enough time to do the reconfiguration ahead of the March 11th election, so that we do not have those logistical lapses, those lapses with beavers before the election or during the election.
Okay.
So, so this is more of an IT issue, and I'm not an IT expert,
Oh.
but then it's now matter for the court to now determine whether INEC can really move, moving this data to its back-end servers. There's no tampering with the data before giving it go-ahead.
I see.
Or otherwise.
I see. And that verdict is going to be coming today because both parties are currently in court.
Exactly.
Yes, thank you.
That's one thing we're going to be watching closely.
Exactly. Now we are live on YouTube at Impact 102.1 FM. We are also live on Twitter at Impact 102.1 FM. You can call on 0700 1021 1021 to join the conversation. You can send in WhatsApp messages to 0907 224 5018 0907 224 5008. My conversation this morning has been with Mark Amanza, a senior communications strategist officer with Yiaga Africa. Let's briefly go on a break. Mr. Mark Amanza, please don't go off the line. Stay on the line. When we return from this break, our conversation continues. Do stay with us. It's on record, where every word matters.
Welcome to On Record.
Every word matters.
What I want to do is to take Nigeria from consumption to production.
My name is Mr. Innocent Chugoma. I started by trading on motorcycle spare parts.
They really ask, how much is the Nigerian life worth?
Policing is everybody's business, not the business of the men on uniform alone.
We will establish student loan 4 years course, but before years course.
When you dispense, a pharmacist dispenses a drug to a patient, the name of the drug must be written on the envelope.
On Record is a 45 minutes program where we discuss the actions, inactions of government, ministries, departments, and agencies, as well as business and health affairs that shape our worldview.
Join us 9 a.m. every weekday on your urban lifestyle station, High Impact 102.1 FM. On Record.
Every word matters.
The best music, the best people, the best talk on High Impact 102.1 FM. Wati Magbo.
On Record.
Every word matters.
Welcome back. Many thanks for joining us on the program. It's On Record, where every word matters. The phone lines are open. You can call us and participate on the program 0700 1021 1021. You can send in your WhatsApp messages to 0907 224 5018 0907 224 5018. You can call 0700 1021 1021. We are live on Twitter at Impact 1021 FM. We're also live on YouTube at Impact 102.1 FM. My conversation this morning has been with Mark Amanza, Senior Communications Officer with Yiaga Africa. Thank you very much once again for joining us on the program, Mr. Mark.
Thank you.
Yes, let's move forward. In Lagos, since it was declared that Labour Party had the highest number of votes than the ruling party in the state, tribal conflicts sprung up in some places in the state as a result of this. Also, on the micro-blogging app, Twitter, there have been some sort of negative jabs to some tribes on the ownership of Lagos. Well, that's not a matter to consider. But with these lapses and tribal conflicts already brewing, how do you see the turnout of voters and the possibility of having the free, fair, and credible elections in such an atmosphere?
So despite all the negativity that has been happening ahead of the election, I think there's a huge voter enthusiasm in Lagos.
Okay.
Especially considering the outcome of the presidential election in the state. So for many voters, it's not a can-do spirit, which is good. which is what democracy should be about. So I still have that confidence in terms of that there will be a high voter turnout, or not very high in terms of at least the governorship election.
Come again? Not I in the sense of what?
At least as high as that of the presidential election. That's my expectation.
Why? Why do you think so? That it's not going to be as high as the turnout that we saw in the presidential elections?
No, I think at least as high. At least as high as
okay, at least as high. Okay.
At least as high as that. So it now behoves on the authorities on INEC to get the legislation right, but also on security agencies to make sure that there is no breakdown of law and order, because you had in cases in certain parts of Lagos during the presidential election where there were cases of violence and attack on voters, and that to ensure that this doesn't repeat itself. And I believe that by this time, security force agencies will be able to do a mapping of where these attacks happened, where they are likely to happen, and be more proactive in preventing them, rather than just let it act after the fact. And if you also look at in January, we released a report called Election Manipulation Risk Index, and we had highlighted Lagos.
Okay.
And one of the things we used in doing that mapping was voter election violence or voter suppression, and Lagos was on a high risk ticket identified. So, which was the idea of the report, which we call EMRI in-house, Election Manipulation Risk Index, was basically to empower stakeholders, in this case, for example, the police and security agencies with information to take action. Unfortunately, that wasn't acted upon, but we also have what happened on February 25th as enough information and data that they need to take proactive steps to prevent a recurrence.
Okay, I see. Let me take you to this aspect of it. I'm still going to come back to the Nigerian police force and election security, most especially looking ahead of March 11th election. Your organization, as well as others, were on the field during February 25th elections. What are the things the electoral body needs to be mindful of as preparations for the gubernatorial polls in order not for those challenges to repeat itself?
So first, INEC needs to get the logistics right. It needs to be able to sort out how it deploys its election officials, materials, or polling units. That is a critical part of this election. In my opinion, I don't know what excuse INEC can come up with. I think the fact that they had even their cash needs, their cash requests granted by the CBN ahead of the February 26th election. So for March 11, that needs to be sorted out. There should be no reason why voters have to wait until late afternoon, until evening, before voting commences, because their polling officials are not arrive on time or haven't even arrived at all. They also need to figure out, if need be, a sort of refresher training for their ad hoc officials on how to use the BVAS machines, how to properly transmit election results at the end, so that those hitches last Saturday do not repeat it. 2 Saturdays ago do not repeat themselves again.
Just a moment, Mr. Mark. You're going to continue with some of these preparations that INEC will need to come up with ahead of the elections, ahead of the March 11 elections. But let me interrupt you here in a sense that INEC had 4 years to prepare for these elections. And if we're talking about referring to preparation or taking its ad hoc staff on the use of the BVAS machine, don't you think that doesn't give a good signal at all? If there are complaints that some of the ad hoc staffs are not, adept in knowledge on operating the BVAS machines.
So exactly. So even though I'll be great enough for INEC to say, I know that INEC's funding for this election actually started from last year, and which is one of the things, or one of the clauses that we fought for in the Electoral Act 2022, where they're given their funding at least a year ahead of the election to enable them to prepare properly. Because these logistical issues, it would have been a recurring problem for as far back as we remember, because of late release of funds. So that was supposed to be taken care of. However, those issues still remain. So I think it's something that for INEC to look inward and ask themselves and find out how they can they need to fix these challenges where they keep coming up again and again, especially in the fact that they have now been given funding a year ahead.
Okay. Now let's talk about the deployment of logistical machines, deployment of logistical facilities, and conveying INEC staff, INEC ad hoc staff to the polling unit. Election observers, are they conveyed together, whether from Yiaga Africa or other civil liberty organizations, including the international observers? Do they come on their own, or do they go together with INEC officials and their ad hoc staff and the NYSC core members?
When you say go together, can you clarify what that
they move together to the polling unit?
So election observers have to be accredited by INEC.
Okay.
The accreditation is done ahead of the election.
Yes.
So once the accreditation is done, observers can then choose the polling unit in which they want to go to.
Okay.
Go and observe the election and work by the guidelines of observation. Of course, be properly identified, have their identification tags, and so on. But the work of election observers is independent of INEC. It's independent. It's not in conjunction with INEC, because the idea is to be an independent observer.
All right, there are some allegations leveled against INEC that the way their staff came to the polling unit and at what time they came. Some of them came around 12 o'clock. Some of them came around 1 o'clock, 1 p.m. for an election that was built to commence 8:30 in the morning. People say that this is a strategy to in other way to compromise the process. So, is there any way that INEC officials or with logistics they can be monitored themselves, or INEC can come up with a system to monitor itself and its staff for them to be up and doing during elections, and they are not used as an instrument to frustrate the efforts of the commission itself?
So I can't speak to the motivations of the INEC staff who didn't show up on time. But the reason that's been given in many instances was that logistical arrangements were not made. We have had anecdotal evidence where voters had to mobilize themselves to go and bring polling officials.
Oh, really? Please, where did that happen?
I've seen instances of where voters have reported that on social media.
Okay.
I do know in my own polling unit, for example, the previous machine wasn't working. And the voter was a few voters with the police that went to the INEC official, to the INEC office to get a different, a new machine and came back. And that's something I witnessed. So in that kind of situation, I mean, and these are the logistical issues that I was referring to. In one case, for example, that was reported on social media was that the officials were in the office and said they're not giving any transportation arrangement, they didn't have any transport arrangements. Those are the logistical issues I refer to the INEC needs to sort out in terms of how they get their materials, how they get their officials to the polling units in good enough time to start. And this is something that we should be able to fix. If you compare other African countries, in places like in Zambia or in Kenya, which had elections recently, you had elections starting at 6 a.m. and by 5:30, polling units were already set up. At 5:30 a.m., polling is already set up. This should not be something that should be happening again. You know, where you have voters very enthusiastic, go to the polling on time, and then wait for hours for officials and materials to arrive.
I see. Okay, my conversation this morning has been with Mark Amanza, Senior Communications Officer, Yiaga Africa. We have been talking about the elections, reviewing what happened in the 25th of February, where we had the presidential and the National Assembly elections. You can participate by calling into the program 0700 1021 1021. You can equally send in WhatsApp messages to 0907 224 5018, 0907 224 5018. Now, let's talk briefly about the Nigerian police force and election security. Now, because of what happened during the February 25th elections, they don't want, the electorates most especially don't want that occurrence to reoccur. So there are plans by some electorate and groups to go to the polls on Saturday, accompanied by their dogs, as a form of protection against intimidation from political thugs and ballot box snatchers. The reason for this is not hidden, given what happened on February 25th. But the spokesman for the Nigerian Police Force, Olumuyiwa Adejobi, citing Section 126, subsection 1 of the Electoral Act, says dogs could be classified as offensive weapon, as their owners or handlers can use them to intimidate, harass, and cause assault and bodily harm to others. The case of the election security is a big deal, and it needs unusual innovation to tackle it. How can you address this?
I think it's not for the police to provide adequate security. When citizens begin to take security into their own hands, as long as we see a lot in Nigeria, which is the idea of going to the police, your dogs, is a form of vigilantism.
Yes.
And ordinarily, vigilantism should be a crime. We have to normalize in Nigeria so that we have vigilantes everywhere on our streets, our markets, our communities. And for me, it's a symptom of the problem that we do not have enough faith in our security agencies to protect us. So, while the police spokesperson has quoted that whatever section of the law, and that can be said that interpreted is right, it now behoves them to ensure that inadequate security is provided to those voters, so that voters do not feel the need to have to go with their guard dogs to provide security for themselves. Because the police person, in my opinion, is right in the sense of you can come to the dog to protect people, to protect yourself, but you can also use it as a form of intimidation towards other voters.
Okay.
That's your motivation.
Yes.
But then, what is the police doing to ensure that voters feel secure enough to go and vote? That is also the question.
Okay, now still looking at this, can't we know that Nigerian police cannot stand in front of the polling units armed with guns, and the police officers that are present in the polling units there are without guns. Some of them have batons, some of them don't even have batons, and when they stay there, they can't they have if it's in the position of Yiaga Africa and other civil society organizations, by virtue of the experiences they've had in the field, monitoring elections, do you give advice to the federal government, to INEC, and equally security agencies like the police force on what they could do better in managing the security in election situations? Because it doesn't look as if there is any form of improvement at the moment with the complaints coming from Nigerians.
So I'll be fair enough to say that while there have been cases of intimidation and of violence, those are not as widespread as social media have us believe. And one something we need to keep in perspective.
Okay.
They're not as widespread as social media have us believe. And an overwhelming number of polling units they didn't have this incident. I think so. But beyond that, I think it also speaks to the capacity of the state in terms of providing adequate security. The argument has been the past where we've used military, for example, for election security, was that the show of military force itself also became an intimidation towards voters who necessarily from the polls. However, I do believe that there's a way that these security agencies, and by the way, when it comes to elections, INEC and security agencies interact. There's an interagency consultative committee on electoral security called ICCS, the acronym, which meet periodically to talk about these election-related security matters. But I think with proper mapping, we can able to identify those places that are likely to be hotspots, and have put in place adequate arrangements to forestall breakdown of law and order. Not every place, and these are some of the things we identified in our Emory report. The fact that some states have had a history of electoral violence. It's just easy to predict that based on trends, this could happen. Our pre-election observation report always points out, because observation doesn't just start on the day of the election. It's before the election.
Yes.
We monitor things like the rhetoric coming from politicians, as well as the political temperature in those areas. So, for example, if we're going to do for Lagos governorship elections, we're able to tell that yes, there's a rising political temperature that is happening based on towards the elections.
Yes.
You're able to use that kind of information and put in place adequate arrangements, and don't apply a one-size-fits-all towards securing voters.
But are there specific innovative suggestions that Yiaga Africa must have made to the federal government or INEC itself on election management and the implementation of such a suggestion to make sure that our electoral process gets better as we progress?
Sorry, can you repeat that question again?
Now, is there any innovative suggestion that will become a policy framework for the federal government, coming from probably your organization, Yiaga Africa, and other civil society organizations, even to INEC itself and the security agencies, on now for us to better the electoral process as we progress?
So for us, for example, after the results of the presidential elections were announced, we made our put out a report and we made preliminary recommendations.
Yes.
Such as an audit and investigation into the election result portal, where it been work associated to we highlighted inconsistent results from Rivers and Imo State, and asked INEC to clarify, and so on. But we do know these are preliminary recommendations.
Okay.
For us as active play partners in the election in elections work, we hold the elections, which includes the governorship and state assembly elections that shall happen this weekend.
Okay.
We're also going to do a more comprehensive post-mortem and make our recommendations. As for us, election reforms is not an event, it's a process. And
Okay.
we're very aware that after all the work we did that contributed to the success of the Electoral Act in 2022, the work wasn't done there. We know that after this election, which is the answer that we should have as stakeholders, where after every election we go back and look at what works, what didn't work, and how to fix it, how to codify as much of it into law, whether the something is based on law, is a matter of processes, and all these issues. So yes, post the election, we will be making our full recommendations and begin to also walk the talk in making sure that as much of it becomes implemented.
Okay, thank you very much. Still on the case of election security. Now, listening to top INEC officials speak on the conduct of electorates during elections, informed that for persons who want to stay back after casting their votes should maintain about 300 meters away from the polling units. Now, that's a specific description for people to conduct themselves after casting their votes, after casting their ballot, for them to move and give substantive space, not to constitute any security risk. 300 meters away from the polling unit. But for the armed forces and the armed officers and other armed security agencies, it's stated that they should be completely out of sight from the polling units. This also is very, very specific, but unruly elements take advantage of this gap to perpetrate nefarious activities. Is Yiaga Africa looking at influencing the authorities to review the presence and the way police officers should appear by a way of policy framework during elections? Because as it is now, they are the only people that can be neutral when elections are being conducted, and to say the least, they need to earn the trust of the electorates.
So these are things that we're going to look at in totality when we do our full promotion of the election. And if we do see that this has significant impact on how the process is conducted, yes, we'll be making recommendations to having that change.
Okay. Now, before I finally let you go, we have just like 2 minutes or so to the end of the program. What is your expectation in March 11th election, which is just a few days away from now? What are your expectations? What is Yiaga Africa looking out to? Because if just having election monitoring agents in the field, if we just have them monitor the elections and they come back with their reports, and their reports does not add or fix the system or make the system better, it's as good as not having them in the field in the first place. So in what way does your presence and other electoral monitoring agents benefit the Nigerian electoral process?
Yeah, so my expectation for the election on Saturday is that hopefully will be higher voter enthusiasm than we had on 25th, and hopefully they will also have a higher voter turnout, that people will turn out and vote. We should also look to see that the office of the governor and state legislators are also very, very important.
Okay.
Because and we should come out and vote for our preferred candidate. For us, Yiaga Africa, we are while we use what we call the parallel vote tabulation methodology for the presidential election. We'll be applying that methodology in 3 states, in Benue, in Delta, and in Kano State, and also deploying a single observer methodology across the entire country. In terms of how we contribute to the process, so like we said earlier,
yes,
we in our report on the presidential elections, we highlighted inconsistencies in the results that came out from Rivers and Imo State, and have asked INEC to review those results. So we do contribute a lot to the process in terms of being that independent check for the, and keep in mind that our observation doesn't just look at only the results, but also the process. So that process is also very, very important because it goes a long way to determine how the outcome of the result. So, and this is something that we have been doing since 2017. We have not just for presidential elections, but for all the off-cycle governorship elections, we have always deployed election observers and produced reports. So that's still what we're doing, and that goes a long way to assure voters that their independent voices are there to oversee the process, so that we're not just having only INEC's word for it.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Mark Amanza. Mr. Mark Amanza is a senior communications officer for Yiaga Africa, who has a reputation for improving and promoting issues of public policy, governance, training and empowering citizens to lead change in their community, bringing innovating programs aimed at stimulating active citizens' participation, protecting human rights, and deepening democratic governance in the country. Mr. Mark Anza, it's a wonderful time having you speak with us this morning on Record.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That's where we drew the curtain this morning on Record. And before I finally say goodbye to our listeners this morning, a brief update to what we are expecting towards the March 11th governorship and state parliamentary elections. The appeal court will be sitting today to clear the air on the certainty of Saturday's gubernatorial and state assemblies elections. This is because one of the candidates of the presidential election, Peter Obi of Labour Party, is seeking redress in the court of law, and one of his proofs, or one of what he said is one of his proofs of evidence, is the bimodal voters accreditation system machine, BVAS. The electoral umpire has said on its own part that it needs to reconfigure the BVAS machines and redeploy them for Saturday, March 11th governorship and state parliamentary elections. But Obi has insisted that they need to inspect the electoral materials used for the conduct of the presidential elections. Now, the court will be sitting today to determine where we go from here. So the verdict of the court is going to determine what will happen on Saturday 11th March for the State Assembly and the gubernatorial elections. In reference to Mr. Mark Manza, he said whatever the court determines is going to determine whether the elections are going to hold on Saturday or not. But what's your take? Even before the program, you can send in your positions to our WhatsApp lines. My name is Oyinpriye Krumale, and that's where we draw the curtain on today's episode of On Record, where every word matters. Until I come your way again tomorrow, do have a great day.
Our pastors, our imams, in every church, in every mosque, please realize that in the course of praying for peaceful and transparent elections, we all have duties beyond prayers. If we